Welcome back, everyone. The Benzinga Cannabis Capital Conference took place today, and our next guest was a speaker there. Let's welcome Boris Jordan, Curaleaf's executive chairman, who joins us now. So, Boris, first of all, give us your biggest takeaways from the conference about where the industry is headed.
Listen, the industry is very strong. We're seeing very robust growth across the board in the United States, now in Europe, in Latin America, and even in Asia. And so I think the cannabis tradition that was outlawed in 1936 in the United States and in other countries around the world is making a very, very strong comeback, and it's hitting mainstream across many, many continents as well as many countries.
Boris, Dave Briggs here. Good to see you. The country is celebrating 420. Is the cannabis industry, though, celebrating it, given the lack of progress out there in terms of legislation? And let's talk about Curaleaf stock down 50% in the last 12 months. Why?
Listen, our biggest problem is the federal government is so far behind the popular thought process on this. We have over 90% approval ratings. It may be the only bipartisan issue the United States of America is united on today, but yet our legislators in Washington are behind the eight ball. They don't understand what's going on. The Democrats, to be honest, have been a huge disappointment to the industry. We all came in after the election of President Biden thinking that we were going to get real activity in the area of legislation, and we've gotten absolutely nothing. And I think that's the real problem. But in spite of that, we've had tremendous fundamental growth in the industry. To give you one example, in 2018, Curaleaf went public. It had $70 million in revenue at a $4 billion market cap. Today, we have $1.5 billion in revenue, and we're still trading at a $4 billion market cap. Where else, anywhere in the world, have you seen that kind of growth and absolute stagnation in terms of valuations of companies?
So then in terms of the path ahead to really get us to the point where the U.S. will see federally legal cannabis, what do those steps look like? Because you do seem to be very optimistic about it.
Yes, I think there's 4 steps to legalization. I think we're going to start with hopefully either this year, probably in the lame duck session, some level of safe banking and hopefully some budget for expungement of convictions. There's been a lot of decriminalization around the country at the state level, but there is no money for actually running the expungement process. And so I know that Senator Booker is looking for some money for expungements. We're very supportive. We hope we can get something like that done this year. And then we think following on from that is probably tax reform. Following on from that is interstate commerce, and then finally descheduling of cannabis. We think the full process could take as much as 1 to 4 years to get through the whole process. But there's no question that we're much closer today in terms of support in Washington and at the state capitals than we've ever been before. And I've been in this industry for almost 10 years. So it's a very, very positive in terms of the way we're moving today.
Although the dynamics still feel relatively the same. The MORE Act continues to pass the House, dies in the Senate. Chuck Schumer was supposed to unveil his cannabis legislation with Booker and Wyden. Today, it's now kicked down to August, and we all know what happens around midterms, nothing, and power could swing to then Republicans, which puts this thing off for years down the road. What is your message to Chuck Schumer, to Democrats, let alone the Republicans, because 0 in the Senate have supported any legislation?
Well, firstly, shame on Senator Schumer, Senator Biden, and Senator Wyden for not doing what they said they were going to do this week. Secondly, that bill, to be honest, was never going to get passed. They understood it themselves. That's why I believe they pulled it. I don't believe they moved it. I think they pulled it because it had 0 support, and it wasn't particularly well written. I personally think that, from my understanding, the banking chair in the Senate now is working on cannabis reform bill that's safe plus. I believe we're working together with the staff of these senators to try and get some money in there for expungement of particularly in those states that have already decriminalized cannabis. And I think we have a good chance. Listen, 65% of the congressmen and senators that are on the committee for Competes Act are actually pro-cannabis. So there could even be a surprise because, as you know, SAFE is in the Competes Act at the moment. It's there now, and it has not been taken out. And if you look at the committee, 65% of the joint committee between the Senate and the House are pro-cannabis. That could be a big surprise. The second thing is, obviously, I worked on the Hill in 1986. I remember it was a midterm election, and a lot of unpopular piece of legislation got passed during the lame duck session. This is going to be a generational change, probably in the House of Representatives, probably less so in the Senate. And there could be the chance to be able to pass cannabis legislation in both the House and the Senate during the lame duck session. They tend to be a lot more cooperative, a lot more bipartisan during those sessions.
Boris, the one thing I hear over and over again from businesses big and small is they need the ability to write off business expenses. How important is that for companies like Curaleaf and even the little guy?
Listen, we're a U.S. company that pays an effective 70 to 80% tax rate because we're not allowed to do that. So that's just, I have no words for what's going on in the country. But let's also look at, everyone's talking about social equity. Without banking legislation, without the right to open up a bank account, without the right to borrow at normal rates, how can any young minority entrepreneur get a license opened up and operating if he's being charged 45% for his money and then he has to pay an 80% tax rate? It just can't work. What about our workers who are dying in the shops on the West Coast? And I think that will come to the East Coast because we're holding too much cash and we're getting robbed by criminals in these shops. And we've had 3 murders in the last month in cannabis shops on the West Coast because we can't get this banking legislation done. And this is really becoming a problem. The Senate and the House need to act now.
And as we're seeing with this piecemeal approach, though, in some states, we're still waiting to see some of this legislation pass. But then you also said you called the DEA allowing cannabis companies to move seeds between states a leap forward. Why is that? Just very quickly, as we're running out of time.
Well, because it's very efficient for businesses. Today, we have to start, from local seed. It takes a long time to get a productive seed. By being able to move seeds, which really are absolutely harmless unless they're grown with low levels of THC, this has been a major, major step forward by the DEA for the industry. There are certain areas of federal and local regulation legislation that are working to help the industry. But the overarching problem is still the fact that this is a healing plant, as your previous guest said, that is affecting the opiate industry. It's getting people off of painkillers with no addiction issues. And the federal government, which claims to want to fight against the opiate addiction, has opiates as still front and center and cannabis as a Schedule I drug.
I can certainly see it's frustrating for you. We do hope we see some progress there. Thank you so much, Boris Jordan there, Curaleaf's Executive Chairman. Thanks so much.